What's up, everybody? Tactical Swede here with another how-to video. I've put this one off for a while, but I figure since I have a gun-related channel, I might as well do the obligatory AR-15 Field Strip Reassembly video. I'm going to add a little something on the end that I noticed that a lot of people leave off, and that is doing a basic function check once you reassemble your rifle. The AR-15 is very simple, probably one of the simplest rifles to take down and put back together. And I think due to that, people leave off that function check because it is hard to mess something up, but it does happen. You might forget a component. Anything can happen. So doing that function check, in my opinion, is a really important step of this process. So we're going to go through that at the end. All right, let's get in it. So, as I said, AR-15 is probably one of the easiest rifles to disassemble. Really, it's two pins holding the receivers together. You got your takedown pin here, your pivot pin here. Just going to give a push on those. Flip it over, pop those pins up, and separate your two receiver halves. Take your upper receiver, grab your charging handle, unlock that, pull it out, and slide your bolt carrier group out. And then we can slide the charging handle out too. We'll set our upper receiver aside here. Now, a lot of people will mistakenly call this whole thing the bolt. This is actually several different components that all comprise the bolt carrier group. That is your bolt, which is this piece right here, your bolt carrier, and then your gas key, and then inside is your firing pin. So several different components. First step for taking that apart is arguably one of the most important pieces on the AR-15, and that is this little guy right here, your firing pin, safety pin. Very small, tiny little guy, but it can cause a world of problems if it's not there or if it breaks. You see memes floating around the internet. It says, "Without this, ISIS wins." It's a pretty important piece. All right, once your firing pin, safety pin is out, you can then turn your bolt up, kind of give it a tap on the palm of your hand, and your firing pin should drop out. There she is. There's your firing pin. Next up, your cam pin. As it sits right now, this pin will not come out because it hides underneath of your gas key here. So we're just going to give it a little 90-degree twist, and she'll pull right out. Once that is out, you can then pull your bolt out. If you've gone through a day of firing, you're going to want to give all these parts a nice wipe down, cleaning. Your bolt here, you're going to get a lot of buildup here. As you can see, this hasn't been cleaned since the last time I fired it, so you have a lot of carbon buildup on this edge of the bolt here. One area you're really going to want to pay close attention to. The bolt can be disassembled further. Your extractor here can come out. There's a pin right there that can come out. This whole piece will come off. There is a spring underneath here that you need to be careful it doesn't go flying out. Your ejector here as well can be taken out. Again, there's a spring under that, so you need to be careful. But for all intents and purposes, just basic cleaning, this is as far as you really need to go with it. Some people will pull this stuff apart, but not something you need to do for everyday routine cleaning. Again, all your other bolt carrier group pieces, you're going to want to wipe down and clean. The only other thing that you, on a fairly regular basis, not something you need to do every time you fire, but you should check it from time to time to make sure there's no damage, is your buffer spring. So you want to push in on your buffer here, this little retaining pin you're going to push down, and that will allow your buffer and your buffer spring to come out. Again, it doesn't really get all that dirty, so there's not a need to take it out and clean it every time, but as I said, periodically you want to take it out and make sure it's not broken, getting bent in any kind of weird shapes or anything, but pretty simple. Just the spring and the buffer itself. Just look it over, make sure there's no damage. But that's it. So that right there is your basic run-of-the-mill AR-15 field strip for cleaning purposes. The only time you'd ever need to go any further in depth with this is if you actually have some kind of malfunction, or if you're just looking to change a component in here. Maybe you want to change your trigger, then you're gonna have to pull stuff out in here. A barrel is really the only time you'd really have to mess with your upper receiver, or maybe you want to change your the foregrips, anything like that. But this is basic run-of-the-mill field strip. So now that we got our part, we get everything cleaned up. I'm not going to actually do the cleaning right now, but put her back together. Just slide your buffer spring and your buffer back in, and you should just be able to push that in past that retaining pin there, and then just kind of give it a little push, make sure she's not binding. Alright, let's put our bolt back together. One thing that I wanted to show you on the bolt itself, there is some debate online about this, whether or not it matters. I follow the way I was always taught. Right here on your bolt you have 3 gas rings. It's basically just little washers, snap rings, whatever you want to call them. But you'll notice there's a little gap right there. There's a little gap right there. Each one of these, there's 3 of them. Each one of them has a little gap. Now the way I was taught is when you put this back in, you don't want all 3 of those gaps lining up, because that will allow a path for gas to flow back into this end of the bolt. So some people say it doesn't matter. I follow the way I was taught. Make sure those gaps don't line up. Alright, so take your bolt carrier and your bolt, slide that in. Then you want to make sure that the hole in your bolt and the hole in your bolt carrier line up there. You're going to slide your cam pin back in, and again give it a 90-degree twist. Once that's in, you can drop your firing pin in, and again, for that most important piece, your firing pin safety pin. Slide that in there. And she's giving me a hard time today. There she goes. Alright, so now your firing pin's locked in there. A good way to tell if those gas rings I was pointing out, if they're worn, extend your bolt and kind of turn it up and just give it a little tap on the table. If it stays extended like this, your gas rings are in good shape. If it drops down, or if it just drops down from turning it up like this, you probably need to replace those gas rings because they're getting worn. Alright, next up, for putting this back together again, you'll notice on your charging handles you have those 2 ridges on the end either side here. Those are going to correspond with these grooves here inside of the upper receiver. You'll see one right here and one right here. It's kind of basically where that big circle is in there. So take your charging handle, stick it in the open end of the receiver, and then just kind of set it down on the bottom and start sliding it forward, and it should drop into place once it hits that groove, as you can see right there. Now you slide that forward just a little bit so it stays in there. Grab your bolt carrier group, and with your gas key facing down and forward as we're looking at it, just going to drop that gas key into the channel on your charging handle and start to slide your bolt forward and push until you hear the charging handle lock. Simple. Upper receiver is now reassembled. Now we can put our 2 receiver halves together, drop your pins, and she's back together. Now to the part where, like I said, people tend to forget about is we're going to do a quick function check. Alright, make sure she's on safe. Point her in a safe direction. Run your charging handle. Alright, now you're going to pull the trigger, and the hammer should not fall if she's on safe, and she doesn't. Okay, next, you're going to flip your selector lever to fire. You're going to pull your trigger, and you're going to hold it back. As you pull your trigger, the hammer should fall, and she does. Okay, while you're holding the trigger back, run your charging handle again, and now you're going to slowly ease off the trigger until you feel it reset. That click right there is your reset. Now you're going to pull your trigger one more time, and it should fire. Your hammer should fall. And it did. Alright. That, my friends, is your basic field strip, reassemble, and function check important piece of the AR-15 rifle. That's all I got for you guys today. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you guys are liking what I'm doing. If so, please comment below, like the video, and by all means hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on any new videos that we might be coming out with. Alright guys, that's all we got for today, so until next time, live life and have fun out there.